All right. James Hetfield's Seek and Destroy off the Kill 'Em All album. Was that 1986 maybe? I'm not sure. But that is the introduction that I've been using now for 4 years. It'll be 5 years this coming January, so we're 2 months out of doing 5 years. Well, I just said that, didn't I? Of completing 5 years of Discussions of Truth. The initial guest on the show just happened to be Miriam Henning, who had produced a documentary on the killing of the bees, colony collapse disorder. Her website was Honey Colony. I think it's still up, and she had found me via Twitter, speaking out against defending the local people in Miami Beach. I was defending them as they were outraged in regard to the pesticide being sprayed. Oh, I was exposed to it. I smelt it. It was like burning flesh. It would spray over the populace. About 5:30 a.m., 5 different consecutive Saturday mornings. And this one town hall meeting I went to, a good friend of mine, now deceased, David, he urged me to, he's a Jewish guy from Brooklyn, New York, and just somebody I trusted, and he urged me to go to this town hall meeting with him. It was after the meeting when a CBS reporter interviewed me, and my response to Michelle was, these politicians are being puppeted. What I meant by that is Rick Scott was being puppeted by the CDC. It didn't make any sense to me. The people in the chamber, City Hall chamber there in Miami Beach were, is that off of Meridian Avenue? I don't think it's Meridian. I'm not sure what the street is, but we're outraged. Just kind of, one of the ladies showed up with her dog and was just furious, infuriated. Stop spraying the pesticide. I thought, what's to this? I remember being bit by a mosquito and thinking, oh my goodness, maybe I've gotten the Zika virus. So that kind of set the stage. I got involved, and I was telling somebody the story one day, and Kitty is her name. I'm sure, don't know where she is now, but she's not with Windward Radio, because that is now a defunct platform. But she says, hey, come down to the small studio we've got in Wynwood, a district of Miami, and talk about this. It's fascinating. The research I had done, exposing Vanguard Chemical and Chevron Chemical and the Rockefeller Foundation, all tying into the research out of Stanford, the Hoover Institute, Anthony Sutton, who had given a speech in 1972 in Miami Beach and then walked away from Stanford because they tried censoring him. Oh, don't you talk about this. All the information is on my website, iantrottier.com. INTROTTIER. If you're listening to this, likely you're familiar with the name by now. If you're not, thanks for listening. And that's how it started. So I was actually living in Canada, about 2 years ago now. About 2 years ago this time, when there was this Wuhan virus, talk of this Wuhan virus, and it slowly kind of made its way to the United States, around the world. I guess coming up February, right? In a few months from now, it'll have been two years. And then I was turned on to it. So I said, this is deja vu. This This is what I lived in Miami Beach, and now it's on this global panorama scale. And then I'm listening to a YouTube video, USA Watchdog. I'm not sure of his name, and he's interviewing Catherine Austin Fitts. And at that time, I had reached out to Catherine. Former roommate of mine says, "Hey, you've got to look into Catherine Austin Fitts just because she's on top of the economics globally." Now, this is probably 3.5, 4 years ago that I initially turned on to the name of Catherine Austin Fitts. And I had reached out there, and she acknowledged the work that I was doing, and to this day, has been invited to join my show, and has accepted the invitation. So at some point, I'm sure we'll be hosting Catherine. But it was her talking to this USA Watchdog guy, and she says, "Yeah, this virus is setting the stage for these software updates." I thought software updates, vaccine software updates. I thought that's exactly what's going on here. This is part of this digital agenda to digitize the economies globally. So I've written an article that I've sent to over 600 politicians and counting, and that article, in a fairly meticulous way, breaks down the course of American history in the sense of its devalued currency. And so I thought, Nixon's shock of '71 abolished the gold standard, but this currency, this fiat currency. I mean, many people have argued this. Many people for many years, for decades. G. Edward Griffin, former guest on the show, and I had G. Edward Griffin on a couple of years before this pandemic thing. So so this is all about economics. It's all about economics. Not that the coronavirus is not an actual virus. It's based off of a legitimate virus, just like Zika is a legitimate virus. If you have proper credentials, you can order a vial of the Zika virus from ATCC, which is a laboratory out of the United Kingdom. The Rockefeller Foundation owns the patent on it. Yeah, sure, you can study the Zika virus. What alarmed me is that it and the pesticide, known as Nailed, Dibron, a couple different trade names, they were acting the same way in the body. Only one was breaking the blood-brain barrier of the brain. Yet the CDC was saying that Zika was causing microcephaly. That was contrary to the science that I was getting. What was causing the microcephaly, the stunting of the child's growth, the brain, in the fetus, what was causing the microcephaly was the pesticide. And that's when I wrote the article from Merriam, which is, I believe, still up on honeycolony.com. You can find it on my website. Again, you just type in bit.ly/Zika, capital Z-I-K-A, capital M-I-A-M-I-A, Miami, Zika, Miami. You can find it there. So this is there's something more going on here than just digitizing the currency. There's something going on here about manipulating the human brain. Type into your web browser right now. Type in DARPA, D-A-R-P-A, DARPA, MIT, like the school, MIT, and Qualcomm, like the corporation in San Diego. You're going to get a result that shows that nanoparticles. This is engineering that's been around for over 5 years. But the result you'll get is an article out of MIT, I believe it is, that shows that nanoparticles can be inhaled by a human being without them realizing, and lodge themselves into their system, mainly the brain, and communicate with Wi-Fi signals. And if I've got this wrong, please write me and tell me you got this wrong, Ian. Well, this technology exists. So do I defend anyone's right to reject the vaccine? I absolutely do. And that's why I have been involved in Clay Clark conferences, Thrive Time, Reawaken America Tour. That's why I've associated myself with the Simone Gold, some of the amazing doctors that he's had involved in his conferences. This isn't political for me. This isn't about being a Democrat or Republican. I have friends on both sides of the aisle. I think there's qualities in both sides. Conservatism, there's qualities. Liberalism, there's qualities. There's qualities on both sides of the aisle. The problem is the whole system has been hijacked. And that's proven by the research done by Anthony Sutton. The Federal Reserve conspiracy. Now, I repeat this. This is not a theory, folks. This is a conspiracy. This is an active conspiracy to dismantle and destroy the United States of America, period. Realize it right now, because this is a communist invasion, and you can look at the work of Servando Gonzalez, former guest of mine, a contributing author to my forthcoming book. Servando Gonzalez, educated at the University of Havana, who said that this is exactly what happened to Fidel Castro Cuba, is exactly what the CIA is implementing and wanting to have happen in the United States of America. That's what this is. So if you peel back the layers, you realize, okay, there are some historically solid powers at work here that have been working nonstop to destroy the United States. And right now you can see it. The military is being dismantled as we speak. It's being slaughtered. Reject the vaccine is what I employ on you. Do not get that vaccination. Do not get the boosters. If you've been vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccine, do not get the boosters. Every human being, this is your body. Your God-given, whatever God is to you. You didn't buy it. It's been given to you through your parents. It is your body, and you control what your body receives. That is your right. And the minute you think that it's somebody else's right, that's when you're fooling yourself. So I fully support anybody's right to choice on vaccines. And Joe Biden, whoever's pulling his strings, and I'll tell you who's pulling his strings, the central bankers out of Switzerland, that's who's controlling his strings. It looks like, and I get into this real quick before we bring on today's first guest, Leila. But here is an article. And if you do not start questioning the narrative that you have received through your education, whether it's private or public, then you're wasting your time. You need to start questioning authority. You need to start questioning what your government tells you. The U.S. Constitution, your rights are being infringed on. There is a reason that the government is based on that Constitution. When you start the censorship and big tech, you've got problems. We have major problems in this country. Major. And only you can make that change, folks. Only you listening can make that change. So pass this on to somebody. Speak to your mind. Contact your governor. Contact your senator. Only you can make this change. Go to your local town hall meeting. Whatever it takes. All right. Chicago Tribune, the 5th of January, 1879. Oh, Ian, 1879. The world's changed so much now. Has it? Has the world changed that much in 1879? Well, we have some of these technologies that are advanced. But the basic struggle of human rights, I don't think, has changed in that time period. 140 years. Karl Marx interview. Bismarck thought Marx was working with the Jesuits. Pope Francis is he's not a Franciscan. He's a Jesuit. And if you study history, there's many arguments that the Jesuits have something sinister going on. They are the God's Marines. That's what they call them, sir. That's what they're called. The Black Pope heads the general of the Society of Jesus. I think it's Arturo Sosa, Venezuelan today. Oh, whoa, Venezuela, another former flourishing democracy, right, at one point, before the central bankers got to him, destroyed that country. Just ask any Venezuelan in Miami if they have some comments on that. Here's a quote. The old gentleman smiled. This is in the article. It is very absurd, yet it has a comic side. For 2 months previous to the attempt of Hedel, Bismarck complained in his North German Gazette that I was in league with Father Beck. Okay, this is Karl Marx speaking. And I don't know who the interview was conducted by, but it was printed in the Chicago Tribune in 1879. The leader of the Jesuit movement, and that we were keeping the socialist movement in such a condition that he could do nothing with it. But your international society in London directs the movement. It is known to me, and this comes through Eric John Phelps, a recent guest of mine within the past 6 months, a theologian. It is known to me that Peter Jan Beck, B-E-C-K-X, the then head of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, was actively working and tutoring Karl Marx at the British Museum in London, being funded by Frederick Engels. The writing of Das Kapital by Karl Marx. Okay? Again, the point. theologically, is this a theory? Oh, is it a theory? Maybe it is a theory. Theologically, Karl Marx, according to this publication, via Eric Jonfelms, Karl Marx was being tutored by Peter Jan Bex, with an X, the head of the Society of Jesus, Jesuits. Yet Bismarck had banned Karl Marx and the Jesuits from his country for good reason. Now, before we bring on today's first guest, you can find at jesuitinquisition.blogspot.com, written by a fellow named James, who I've reached out to. He explains that Fidel Castro was working for the Pope. This is nothing new to Cubans. Like I said, Servando Gonzalez openly stated on this show over 2 years ago that what happened in Cuba is being designed to happen in the United States. So if you embrace socialism, go enjoy it. Go to Cuba, go to Venezuela, go to China, go to Russia, all these countries practicing socialism, communism. It doesn't incept in any of those countries. It incepts in Germany. According to this author, it incepts from the Jesuits. Don't practice it here. It's anti-constitutional. I just had Anthony Sabatini on the show, running for federal congressional seat, active representative in Florida. He said even the Federal Reserve Central Bank is it's unconstitutional. It needs to be repealed. He said that verbatim on this show 2 days ago. If you control the money strings of a country and the government, you can control every aspect of their society. Media, education. It's time America realizes this is not only a possibility, it is happening. From the top down. Dr. Selenko, protocols against COVID-19 coming your way, scheduling that. And next week we're going to host, let me get this here before Leila, I bring on Leila. Next week I'm going to host author of The Hidden Nazi, The Untold Story of America's Deal with the Devil, Dean Reuter. And like I try not to get political, I try not to get religious here. Some things simply cannot be explained in life, though, right? And there should be an explanation for everything. And if your rights, my rights, are being infringed on, you need to wake up. You need to raise your voice. You need to make a difference. Make sure those rights are held on to. Okay, Leila. Bringing Leila on right now. Leila Centner. Bringing her on right now. She is the Chief Happiness Officer and co-founder of Centner Academy. Bringing her in now. Thanks for joining Discussions of Truth. It's Ian Trottier. IANTROTTIR. Yeah, anyway.
Hello?
Yes, Leila, Ian Trottier, hello. How are you today? Welcome to Discussions of Truth.
Hi.
I'm doing well. Leila, can you hear me all right?
I hear you. We have a 5:30.
5:15. I can bring you back on in 15 minutes. It's fine. I'm flexible.
Oh, sorry. Did I have it wrong?
Yeah, that's okay. I can.
No, you just do you want to connect with me on Skype?
Audio works great for me, if that works for you.
No, if this works for you, this is great. We can do this. No problem. I'm ready.
Fantastic. Leila, welcome to the program, and it's a pleasure and honor to have you. For listeners, give a quick introduction to yourself, if you would.
So, my name is Leila Centner, founder of Centner Academy, which is a private school here in Miami, Florida, and I'm one of the school owners and school leaders that have taken a stance against this tyranny that our children across the world are schools. And I've said absolutely no to mask mandates, no to social distancing kids at school, no to plexiglass, no to anything other than letting our kids be kids. It's plain and simple. It's not rocket science. It's not anything abnormal. It's just common sense, allowing our children to be children. And that's what I'm fighting for, and that's what I'm standing up for. And really just trying to inspire other school owners, school leaders, and parents to stand up for our kids, because if we don't stand up for our kids, I don't know who will.
Well, thank you very much. And it looks like, according to your website, you're a mother of two. You graduated magna cum laude from the University of Southern California and received an MBA from the University of California. So you're well educated. Thank you for doing what you're doing. So you know my background. I started this program coming up now on 5 years ago in Miami Beach, and Leila, I just this week hosted Florida Representative Anthony Sabatini, who is also very outspoken against these mandates. Talk a little bit more about your involvement there in Miami and how it's being received, Leila.
You broke up a little. Can you repeat that last part, please?
Yeah, sure. Talk a little bit about how your involvement has gone in Miami. How have people received your work in regards to the anti-mandates and so forth?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because when I was in the press last year, not last school year, which was April of this year, about not wanting our teachers to get the vaccine. And it really kind of showed me in our community who's on which side, because
Yeah.
I had some parents that were absolutely irate with me. I mean, they were just incredibly upset about how dare I remove, the right for these teachers to have this shot. And I'm like, but I'm making this decision because there's so much about the shot that we don't know. Like, we don't know what we don't know. And there are all sorts of anecdotal cases out there that I'm hearing directly from doctors and pediatricians who are telling me case stories, of, for example, a 20-month-old baby that spent the weekend with their recently vaccinated parents that's bleeding from the vagina, or a 3-year-old little boy who developed a rash around his private parts. And he's telling me all of these weird things that are happening. There's one thing in common, and it's that they were recently around someone freshly vaccinated. And he said he this in his 40-year career. And
Incredible.
so when I'm hearing these things directly, I'm a mama bear. And, I try and use my critical thinking brain, which knows that the science has not been concluded either way. This is still in the experimental phase. There is so much about the shot that we do not know. And it's my responsibility as a school owner to err on the side of caution. Knowing the data that the CDC has published, that these kids have a 99.9974% survival rate, that these kids are getting COVID and they don't even know they have COVID because they're asymptomatic. So why would I risk their little lives when my population is insane? Yet they yet the Miami Herald labeled me as insane and dangerous because I'm trying to protect my community. And so for me, I say, look, this is great. Anybody that thinks I'm insane and dangerous shouldn't come to my school. But the people that actually go, this lady is sticking her neck on the line to protect these children, even though it cost me, letting out 40 parents out of their contract. I'm willing to pay the price to protect these kids. That's how far I'll go. And for those parents, you know, they've connected to our school. I have parents, we got 105 new students this last school year, and they came from all over the country. So we are the light for many parents. And for the ones that, they look at us as the dark side, then great. You'll find the school that fits you best. So it really is like the parting of the Red Sea. We had one side of the fence on one end and the other side on the other end. And it really separated our community, and then we came together this school year as a community a lot more aligned. So when the second situation hit, where I did not want the kids to get vaccinated, and that leaked to the media. My community was super strong and very much aligned, and it didn't phase them one bit. I didn't have one parent come to us and say, "You're a crazy person. I want out of this school." They were like, "We support you. Thank you for standing up for our kids. You know, if we didn't have a school like yours, we'd be homeschooling because we do not want our children around all these vaccinated teachers. You know, we do not want our kids around all these vaccinated kids that are getting this COVID shot that we have no idea what's going to happen to them." And so that's the community that we've attracted. And, you know, it's been great because we can have these open conversations. And, you know, a lot of us feel like in, you know, prior to 2 years ago, we might have been the black sheep. And now at our school, we're all very much aligned because we believe in immunity, natural immunity. You know, my school is a school about mindfulness. Our kids meditate every day. We do sound bowl healing. Our school food is gluten free, sugar free, dairy free. Like, our kids go to PE 5 days a week. We focus on love and laughter and connection. Like, these are all things that schools have forgotten because they just are all about test scores, test scores, test scores. And that's not what our kids need. Yes, our kids need academic excellence, but with a strong foundation of love and connection, they can achieve so much more. And so that's what Centner Academy is all about.
And that's wonderful. It sounds like it might be if you're getting students from all over the country. Has it become a boarding school?
No, we have so many families that have moved their entire family just to come to our school. They picked up from Pennsylvania, from California, from New York, from New Jersey, like Maryland, picked up their entire family just to come to our school. You know, it's a huge blessing that they have such faith in us, but it's also a huge responsibility because, you know, I understand the need to want, you know, your kids to be protected. I mean, I built my school because of my two daughters. And so I would go to great extent to do anything for my kids. And I feel like these parents that are in my community are the same way. Like, I tell parents all the time, you're sending your kids to a school where they're being forced to wear a mask for 8 hours a day. Like, do you understand? Do you understand? That's my daughter trying to get on. Do you understand the emotional impact that that's having on our kids?
Yeah. If your daughter wants to say a few words, she can say, invite her to have a few words. What is your staff at? How many teachers do you have in your school now? And also, Leila, how are you? What is the local government? How are they treating you as you're obviously you're not vaccinated. What are you doing in regards to your staff? Are you saying only people that are not vaccinated can work here, or are you giving them a choice? And how are you combating that from the local government? How's the local government reacting to your school?
Well, you know, the media did us a huge favor last year. They basically blasted to the world of the type of teacher we're looking for, you know. And so while they were trying to slander us and call us all sorts of ridiculous names, especially me, like insane and dangerous, or even most recently, you know, worse names than that, uh, teachers from all over the country that are actually being fired from their jobs because they don't want to be forced to get this vaccine, or are quitting their jobs because, again, their jobs are trying to force them to get this vaccine. They're pretty much, you know, reaching out to me directly because they're like, oh, I connect with that school. I'm being forced to get something I don't want to get, and that school wants people like me. So they've really done my recruiting for them. I don't have parents applying to our school want that think that this shot is going to save their life and only wants to be in an environment where everybody is vaccinated because they know that's not who we are. So they've actually, even though they thought that they were going to hurt us, they've actually been helping us hire and recruit more aligned teachers and recruit more families that are a lot more aligned, because everybody knows what we're about. And I've had, our base is really from internal referrals or people that have seen us on the media. So everybody that comes in knows what they're getting right off the bat.
CentnerAcademy.com. I've got with me right now Leila Centner, Centner, the founder of Centner Academy. Talk about your time, Leila, with looks like you've joined Del Bigtree in discussion. Talk about your time with Del Bigtree and what he had to say.
Well, I was on his show twice. The first time was back in April when all of this went down, and then again just recently. You know, what I love about Del Bigtree is he used to be part of mainstream media, and he realized pretty quickly that mainstream media was corrupt and one-sided and not really showing the other side. And so he got into this whole world and really dove in to expose the other side and the truth. And Anderson Cooper from CNN has been trying to get me on his show, and I knew that he would just not do what true journalists do, which is show both sides and ask fair questions. But I knew he would try to basically, you know, tarnish me and make me look bad and not even let me speak. So I chose to go on Del's show, and I feel like he's one of the only, not one of the only, but he's part of the good guys. Like, he wants our voices to be heard. His website's not censored. I can say anything and know that I'm able to truly speak the truth. I mean, on my own Instagram, I just posted something from a hearing from the FDA. It was an actual public hearing with the FDA of somebody talking against the shot from the 5 to 11-year-olds because his wife was badly injured by one of these COVID shots. And it didn't even last for a few hours, and Instagram pulled it off for violating community standards. This is a public hearing. And so, being on the Del Bigtree show, I knew that I'd get a fair shot, and he asked great questions, and he's very well informed. And it's just an honor and a privilege to be able to share my side on, even with you here right now on this radio show, where you're not going to just try and clobber me and ask me irrelevant questions, but you really want to hear what I have to say. And I just hope that this message inspires other teachers out there who are being forced to bully kids to say no and be a leader and fight back and stand up for our kids. School owners, uh, school board members, stand up for our kids. Just because someone tells you to commit child abuse doesn't mean that you do it because you were told you need to do it. No, stand up for them. Do what's right. Because at the end of the day, this nonsense will stop if more people just say no. All of these parents that are blindly walking their kids into school every day thinking, oh, it's just a mask, it's no issues. I'm telling you, I saw firsthand evidence with my own eyes for the last school year where I had more kids wearing masks in the beginning of the year. I saw these kids with migraines, nauseousness, dizziness, all sorts of issues from the mask. And the second that they filled out the exemption form and sent their kids to school without a mask, all of a sudden the kids would come back to life. So the masks are causing a problem. If you don't see a physical impact, it is emotional. It is distress. These kids are in constant fight or flight. If they're walking around with a mask for 7 to 8 hours a day, they think that there is something bad out there that's going to either kill them or give them something, and they're going to kill grandma. And that is not a way a child should live.
What do you see happening right now in your country? We've got certainly these mask mandates, and recently, within the past 2 weeks, it looked like the thought was that the interstate travel that the current commander in chief Joe Biden was going to start locking down interstate travel, but then the Southwest airline pilots said, no, we're not getting this vaccine, and the Southwest as a company overturns their policy on the mandates. American Airlines and Delta, from my understanding, followed suit. you're concerned with the public education, and I want to get your view on what's happened to public education before we tackle other items here, such as mandates across the board, um, firefighters, police departments, that sort of thing. In your view, Leila, what's happening in the country right now? Where is this coming from? Is it simply media overreacting and running off of this kind of fear factor, or is there something else going on here in your view? Is there something else happening?
I think it's simple. I think that the media's largest client is pharma. They're acting in best interest of the organizations and the companies that are paying them the most money. And so this is all strategic. They're answering to their master, who is pharma. And guess what? Pharma is also the largest lobbyist to government officials. So they are also answering to their master, which is pharma. This is all very well orchestrated. And if you look at all the big donors out there, the Soros and the Gates, they're also masters because they're huge players in this vaccine world and they're making billions of dollars off of all these mandates. And so until we, the people, take back our power because we have the power and unite, this is only going to get worse and worse. It started with the mandates in California and New York and a few other states with childhood vaccines. And enough people didn't stand up and say no. So they went from attacking the children to attacking the world. And again, it's not going to stop until more people say no. Even if you choose to get the shot, stand up with your neighbor to say no. We support that there should be freedom of choice because I'm telling you, even if you want the shot and you think it's okay, they will take something else away from you. And if we're not united, it's just going to get more and more and more until you have nothing left, until there's no one to stand by our sides because one by one, each segment of the population has been taken away from whatever reason, if it's vaccine injured or if it's death by destruction, whatever the reasons are. Just think about what happened in Nazi Germany. That was a 10-year process. And it was like, okay, it's not impacting me, so I won't say anything. And then one by one, just different segments of the Jewish population were taken down. And when once it got towards the end, I mean, 6 million Jews were murdered. Like, we have to say no now because this is just the beginning of a very, very bad place that we are headed to if we don't all stand together and stop this tyranny.
Yeah, and folks in Miami know firsthand what it's like to come from a country that has been overrun by tyranny, and we can identify that as communism in regards to Cuba and Venezuela. Venezuela, perhaps socialism. But let me ask you this question: Leila, I've had the fortune to grace the presence of Governor DeSantis 2 times in the past 10 months, and both times were in regards to big tech. And as I mentioned, Representative Sabatini joined the program just a couple days ago. And Anthony is a big proponent of fighting and dismantling, holding big tech accountable for their censorship. And you gave an example yourself in regards to your Instagram post. Uh, the question I ask you is the same question I asked him. If we follow the money, do we come to a conclusion that the Federal Reserve's central banking system could possibly be manipulating the government? And look, before you respond to that, Anthony stated verbatim that banking mechanism, signed into law in 1913 by Woodrow Wilson, is unconstitutional. Do you have any thoughts in regards to the economic strings that control the government and the $30 trillion debt that the federal government is in?
I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently about the topic. I just know that nothing seems right and that strings, there must be strings that are being pulled all over the globe right now, which is why we sit back and go, I cannot believe this is happening. I mean, if you look at the VAERS database, which according to a Harvard study, only 1 to 10% of the vaccine injuries are being recorded on that database. If you look at it right now and you run a report, there's over 17,000 deaths reported, which means there's exponentially a lot more. There's over 700,000 injuries. If you look at this data and you sit back and you scratch your head and go, I cannot believe that our government has even approved 5 to 11 when it's clear that there is so much harm that's being done from these shots. You can only think that there's because there's a tremendous amount of strings that are being pulled that's allowing this nonsense to continue. Look at who's on the FDA and the CDC and connect the ties of, when they worked for pharma, like how they go back and forth between this government agency that was put in place to protect us, that seems to be completely uh, biased on pharma side. They're not there to protect us. Like, there's so much corruption that's happening, and we can't put our faith and trust in our government to protect us. We as the people have the power, but I feel like too many of us are waiting for the government to solve our problems. But there's so many corrupt politicians out there that they can't, that the one or the few that do really want to solve our problems can't. Because even think about all the rhinos that are out there. I mean, what I love about Anthony Sabatini, which I love him, by the way, he's calling them out. He is trying so hard to make changes. But even in the Republican Party, there's so many of them that are turning a blind eye to the nonsense that's going on. And I think it has something to do with the lobbying dollars. I feel like if you trace back the money, you will see that people are turning this blind eye because of the money that they're getting from different corporations. And it's sad, but if you think about, some of these congressmen who are making $140,000 a year salary, but they have $60 million in assets, how is that even legal? If you're a regular person and you're doing, and you insider trading, you'll go to jail with the SEC. You can be a congressman and make all this money off of Pfizer and Moderna stock. How is that not insider trading? Why aren't we dismantling the very laws that are making politicians rich off the backs of 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 Americans? And that's what's happening. They've sold their souls, and they basically don't care what's happening to the American people. So I think as Americans, we need to stand together and unite and stop falling for the nonsense that they're trying to put in place to divide us.
Well said.
Because that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of us being united because they know united, we will stop this nonsense.
Very well said, Leila. And again, ladies and gentlemen, it's CentnerAcademy.com. Leila is magna cum laude, University of Southern California. Do you think, Leila, this has been a wake-up call for Americans? What's your general feel? Are more and more Americans feeling the bravery that you're demonstrating and speaking out against uh, these mandates and vaccine mandates, mask mandates, speaking out against the corruption of the government? What do you think? What's your general feel?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I feel like I try and look at the silver lining and the bright side of everything that's happened. And 2 years ago, I knew nothing about Bill Gates. I didn't even know the name Fauci. Um, and now I can have a conversation with so many people about Fauci and Bill Gates. You know, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, maybe it's been 4 years ago, I had no idea about childhood vaccines. And now it's being talked about so much more. So I feel like um, what has happened is really opened the eyes to people that just we were just driving forward, just doing our thing, right? And with everything that's happened, they've really forced us to open our eyes. I had no idea the magnitude of government corruption. No clue. None whatsoever. But now I question everything. I had no idea that fake news was really fake news. I mean, the first time I heard fake news, I thought there's no way. There's no way. Now, when I listen, I mean, I don't really listen to CNN anymore, but maybe if I want to laugh, I listen to CNN and I listen to it and I go, oh my God, every word out of their mouth is orchestrated. It is 100% garbage. And the way mainstream media blasted me all over the world, it just shows me whose side they're on. And they're not looking for the truth. They are censoring the truth. There's reporters coming out that are basically saying their producers won't let them dig into, you know ivermectin or any of these other things. They're not allowed to ask these questions. They're not allowed to talk to the doctors who are saving lives in other ways. Like, they're being paid to push one narrative, which is vaccines. And you know what? That's the death of a society, when your media is 100% paid for by the very organization that we need to be protected against. And so I'm so glad that so many of us know that fake news is truly fake news. And I'm so glad that so many of us understands that we can't just go to one source to get our information, but we need to dig deeper to figure out the real truth. Instead of listening to what the media tells us about the data, go and find the data ourselves. That's what I did not this summer, but last summer. I got in contact with a chief pediatric immunologist at a hospital nearby, and I said, what are you seeing? How many kids' cases of COVID are you seeing? He was the one in charge of reviewing all of the case files. And I went over the data with him on the phone. And then I compared it to what the CDC data, and I saw kids, it just makes sense. Kids are immune from this. What do your hospital beds look like? Like, go in, dig deeper, because we can't trust what is being told to us. We need to verify the information on our own. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And that's what I hope that more Americans are doing, because now I would say probably a good 50% of the population understands that we're being sold a bag of goods. We just need more people to uh, roar like lions and actually fight back, instead of waiting for the small percentage to do it, because we can't do it by ourselves. We really can't. We need more people to come out there with us and unite to turn this over.
Leila, are you familiar with the work you talk about, Dr. Fauci? There is a physician based in South Beach, Miami Beach, Dr. Michael Hall. Are you familiar with this individual?
No, I'm not. Tell me.
I'll make the introduction to you. Michael, I think, is Cornell educated. I'm not sure exactly what type of physician, doctor he is, medical doctor he is, but I will make the introduction. He has a lawsuit. At least the last time he was on my show, he has an active lawsuit where he is suing Dr. Fauci, and this has to do with the Zika virus of 2016, which is also the reason that I started doing my weekly show. Because of that, and so some of these things start to come together, the parallel. But let me ask you, as we wind down, and I appreciate your time, and please tell your family, your daughters, thank you for their time as they're waiting for their mother. Sounds like Leila, I'd like you to tell Americans briefly the road that you took to get yourself here, where you're actively saying, "Whoa, no, I have to question my government. There is massive corruption that I wasn't privy to. The mainstream media is one-sided in the sense of they feed a narrative that's not cohesive to freedom of press, constitutional freedom of press. What's that road that took you there as an owner of a school? Tell listeners briefly that experience for you from going from not questioning media and the narrative and the government to saying, "Whoa, okay, this is totally out of control. Now I will roar like a lion or a lioness, whatever it may be. Now I will roar and make my voice heard loud."
You know, it was, it all happened when right after the lockdown. Well, during the lockdown, I was talking to a friend, and a friend mentioned Bill Gates, and I'm like, oh, what are you talking about, Bill Gates? Like, you lost your mind. And then I just thought to myself, you know what? She's a pretty smart individual. Let me just go and research, and I'm gonna like research. I'm gonna dig deep because something is off. Like, why did we stop the world for 30 days? This is weird, right? And so once I started digging and digging, and I started finding all the things that I started finding, I went through a mourning process where I felt like my heart was crushed because I had lived my life really just thinking that the government had our side and that everything was real and fair. I always had a professional skeptical side to me because I'm an auditor. I was an auditor in my previous life, and so I'm trained to be professionally skeptical. But I just never even thought that all the things that I found could be possible. So I went through a mourning process, and I cried and I cried and I cried, and then I finally said, "Okay, time to wipe your tears, time to stand up strong, and time to fight, and time to say no." And time to realize that people will try and bully me, but I need to do what's right here, right now, not just for myself and for my kids, but for the next generations that come. Because if we don't think about Cuba, I think about Cuba, I think about Iran. My mother came from Iran. My mom fled Iran during the time when the Shah was being taken down. And she told me so many stories about how that went down and how Iran used to be a tourist destination. And now it's where it's at. I mean, I went there once. I was supposed to be there for 3 weeks. I couldn't wait to get out because their oppression was so thick. I couldn't breathe. Cuba. I have beautiful friends who were from Cuba and saw this whole thing transpire. Venezuela, to hear what's happening to these countries now and to see how it was extremely calculated and how they were very strategic about how they took over and how they manipulated the youth, promised all this nonsense, and how they got the youth to hate their country. They're repeating a playbook. This is a communist playbook. And they can disguise it in a pretty word of socialism, but socialism is just a pretty word for communism. And if we want to see our children live free, beautiful lives where, you know, you know, gasoline, one of my friends, the obstacle she has to go through to get her parents $50 worth of gasoline in Venezuela is heartbreaking. She has family members that can't buy diapers for their babies or infant formula. If we don't want that to happen to us here, we must stop the tyranny because they are repeating a playbook and they are succeeding. And they've brainwashed our youth, and the schools have become indoctrination camps all the way from kindergarten to college. You're spending $50,000 a year to send your children to a college that's brainwashing them to hate our country. That's brainwashing them to think that if their skin is white, they're racist, and if their skin is black, they're oppressed, and they have no way to succeed. Even after we had a black president for 8 years, I mean, come on, give me a break. But these kids are actually believing this nonsense, and that's how they bring these tyrants into power because completely brainwashed. We live in the greatest country on earth, and we're one of the last great countries left standing, and they have been strategically taking down everyone else around us. And now they're focused on us because without us, they won't win this. And so I beg people to wake up. Do it for your kids. Do it for your grandkids. And yes, you might get punched in the face. You might get beat up, but it will be worth it because our grandkids will be able to say, my grandparents fought for us to remain free. They fought back the censorship. They fought back the indoctrination. They fought back the government uh, fraud that's been taking place over we the people. And that's why we still have freedom because of our grandparents. It's because of the people that fought in 1776 that where we are today. We owe it to them and we owe it to our kids to not comply and to not blindly follow and to grow a backbone and just say no.
Leila, let's say you're given the opportunity. You're sitting down with Anderson Cooper. He's got one of the most widely heard voices in the news industry. What's a question that you ask him? Flip the script here. What do you ask Anderson? What question do you ask him?
Well, I'll tell you, I was on Fox News with Varney, and he was asking me a real nonsense question. And I said, I have a question for you. Why aren't you guys asking the question? Why are we even considering giving kids 5 to 11 this shot when they have a 100% recovery rate from COVID? Why are you not asking them? Why are you not asking this question? Why are you attacking me for not wanting kids to have this shot? Why aren't you asking how come the CDC is not investigating all of these cases that are in the VAERS database where 15-year-olds are getting blood clots and strokes from this shot, where a 5-month-old baby in the VAERS database died 24 hours after her breastfeeding mom was vaccinated. Within 24 hours of that mom being vaccinated, this baby died. Why aren't you investigating all of these cases where a 38-year-old mom passed away 24 hours after getting this shot, now leaving her two healthy young kids without a mom? Why aren't all these questions being asked? Why aren't you asking these questions? And I'll tell you why they're not asking these questions. They don't want the public. He wouldn't let me finish. He cut the interview after 2.5 minutes because he didn't like the fact that I flipped the script on him. And I was asking him, why aren't you asking these questions? And this is Fox News that everybody thinks Fox News is on our side. I'm sorry, they're not on our side. The rest. Yes, Tucker does it, but it's only a matter of time before they fire Tucker too, because I'm sure they don't like what he's saying because he's speaking way too much truth. And that makes them very uncomfortable to have anybody on their show speaking truth.
Yeah, and I like how you are pointing the finger at Fox News because I implore on my listeners to not take sides. It's this regime is dividing the country, and like you said, Leila, the most important thing that we do now is identify, zone in on what the real threat is, the enemy here, and unite to dismantle and demolish that enemy. Who are some of the allies that you're working with there in Miami? And then as we wind down and close out, I'd like you to leave listeners with some final words, something that you'd like them to walk away with.
I think everybody should be aware of the America's Frontline Doctors. They have a website, and they're really sharing a lot of truth around the COVID shots and things that people can do. So they're not just relying on, the bought and paid for doctors to sell them a bag of goods. I think that they really should go out and explore and do their own research. I have friends that have sadly had their fathers pass away in hospitals. Two of them here in the Sarasota hospital. They over things that had gone wrong in the hospital. So, we have to really take back our power by learning and understanding what's going on and not just blindly listening to what a doctor might say, because sadly, I don't know how much you've investigated the fact that if you die in a hospital with COVID,
Yeah.
hospitals are getting paid, 30 plus $1,000 for that death. I don't know how much you know about that, but we're in scary times right now. So I tell people, look for the doctors that have everything to lose and nothing to gain by speaking the truth. So that way they can be their best advocate. And I think the biggest message I have for parents is really learn what's happening in your kids' schools. Understand curriculum that they're teaching your children. Find out if they're teaching critical race theory in your children's school. Find out if they've banned the Pledge of Allegiance in your child's school. Because all of these things are teaching kids to hate our country and to hate ourselves or each other. And until schools realize that we've had enough, the best thing you can do is pull your kid out and homeschool or find a pod, because your children are going to grow up to not only hate you, but to hate the very soil, that the last amount of freedom we have, which is this country. And so it's our responsibility to protect their mind, body, and soul. And the only way we can do that is be in charge of their environment that they're in. And unless you know everything that's going on at their school, you know, sadly, there are some schools that they're teaching 5-year-olds that they should be able to choose their gender. I mean, I have a 6-year-old. She has no clue what that even means. I would be devastated if she came home from school saying, "Mom, I learned I could choose to be a boy or a girl." The That's not the message you want to give a 5-year-old. That is not the message you want to give a 5-year-old. Or how about critical race theory? "Mom, I heard because the color of my skin is white, you know, that I'm a racist." That's not what I want my child coming home learning. What I want my child coming home learning is love and connection, and that they can look into the eyes of their friend who is black, brown, yellow, white, whatever color, and they're really one. We're all from the same place, and that we're not here to pay for the crimes of our ancestors or the punishment to be punished. We're here to just love and be love. And the best way to create an environment like that, if you don't have a school that fosters that, is to create your own environment. Because these public schools won't survive if everybody pulls their kids out. They will be forced to conform to what's right, and they will stop indoctrinating our kids because the parents had the power and they said, no, we're not going to allow this.
Ladies and gentlemen, Leila Centner, co-founder of Centner Academy, freedom fighter, and mama bear. Leila, thank you for doing wonderful work and raising a wonderful family. Keep up the good work. I'll make the introduction to Dr. Hall for you.
Thank you. You have my cell, so please send me a text.
Leila Centner, and there you have it, folks. This is this is something that I mention and I talk about as I have as I have traveled frequently across the country within the past 12, 13 months now. And really, from my observation, this can go back to when I was first invited to start this show. Winwood Radio, as I mentioned, as I opened up this broadcast, it was the then manager of Winwood Radio, Kitty. I've probably still got her number in my phone. And she says, this is amazing, Ian. What you're talking about needs to be heard. Can you bring this message? Can you talk about this? It was a little studio in a barber shop. I don't remember the name. Hatters, and I can't remember the name of the shop, but I'm sure it's still there. I don't know that the online radio studio was there. I think that got closed down. But I says, yeah, of course, Kitty, yeah, of course. So I went down, and it became a weekly thing, and I started getting former CIA, former White House advisors, PhD. I was just talking about Al McCoy today. Al was one of my first guests. I haven't connected with him in a while. I'm pretty sure he's been on the show a couple times. And he's writing about the opium trades in the Golden Triangle, from what I remember it being referred to. This is the Far East. And he gets his PhD thesis at Yale. He gets a knock on his door in New Haven. It's the CIA. They want him to hand over his manuscript. He says, no, this is my research. You can't do that. He takes him to court. He wins. Last I checked, he's teaching something at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. These are the people I started getting on this small little platform that I had started. I was doing the research fall of 2016. The first show aired the first Wednesday of January. As I mentioned, Miriam Henning was the show's first guest. Dr. Tenpenny, Judy Mikovits. These are other people that had agreed to join the show, and it just grew from there, folks. It just grew from there, and I never wanted, right, and I certainly never wanted to start doing this, and certainly never thought I would begin to speak about the topics that I was speaking about. But getting back to my point about Leila, it was and remains the women, the mothers. Yeah, I can remember the Miami Beach Town Hall debate, if you will. It was supposed to be a debate. It wasn't a debate. The Miami Beach residents against the Zika virus pesticide mandate. It was the women, the mothers, that were the ones pumping fists, screaming. And the men, there were men there too, but the men were kind of withheld a little bit. I think what you're seeing now is the women across this country are making enough ruckus. Now the men are starting to catch on. The intelligence factor certainly sides with the female. We know that. But it's the women in the country. It's the women in the United States that remain and were and are some of the loudest voices and some of the most active protesters. Anyway, that's my personal observation and certainly an opinion. I don't have statistics I can throw at you in regard. But Leila is a perfect example of that. Like she said, she's the mama bear. She's protecting her children, and she's protecting her neighbors' children. That's what women do, and men do as well. I started the website December last year. I was standing on the U.S. Capitol. I was at the Capitol because I was attempting to sit down with Ted Cruz. I was calling his scheduler to try to get a meeting. When I was a high school student, you could simply walk into these offices. There was no problem. Things had changed, and certainly because of the viral breakout of the COVID-19, you had to schedule appointments. That's fine. So I'm calling one of the schedulers for Ted Cruz, see if he had time to sit down with me. I wanted to talk to him about big tech because I had been working with the Google whistleblower and became privy to a couple of the Facebook whistleblowers, and I wanted to engage Ted in the discussion, the conversation, get his involvement. So I says, what is happening here? This is what are the hidden layers going on here? What are some of these hidden layers? Follow the money, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. Does the buck stop with the pharmaceutical companies? No, there's something else going on here, and that's when I opened up this broadcast by talking about Otto von Bismarck having kicked out Karl Marx, right? And Karl Marx being funded by Friedrich Engels, and according to this publication, and Eric John Phelps, and this Chicago Tribune clip, 5th of January, 1879, it seems very apparent that Karl Marx was being tutored in the writing of Das Kapital by Peter Jan Becks with an X. These are not things you're going to be being taught in public schools. These are things, like Leila just said, you've got to start digging for. You cannot go home, sit on the couch, and just turn your tube on. That's filth. It's a waste of your time. And thank goodness Leila called out Fox News. I've got some other information that's very appalling regarding Fox News. Anyway, it's not coming to my mind here. But let me paint a broader picture here for you, folks. Let me paint a broader picture for you. Just something to consider as you fight for your freedom and your Constitution. And again, I don't side with Democrats or Republicans. Corruption in both parties. It's the banking system that controls the government that the government is in debt to. That's who I point the finger at. That's what you need to gut out, folks. That's what needs to be abolished and repealed. According Sabatini just said that a couple days ago. You knock that out and you start cleaning out, because what you have right now is a system that is unconstitutional because it's taken the power to the power to regulate the economics, more or less, away from Congress, and those people represent you. I mean, it boggles my mind why every politician in D.C. is not screaming at the top of their lungs for a transparency to the Federal Reserve private central bank. To me, in my research, it is that cripples this nation, ladies and gentlemen. It is that. And unless you know who the shareholders are and how they're making their money, i.e. Bill Gates, then you're kind of left in a fog, in a daze. You're on the other side of the veil, as they say. So, what is a common thread? Well, what's a common thread? Let's just step back, and our guest today mentioned 1776. Let's just step back. You got Canada, you got the United States, you got Mexico, and then you go down to the Central American countries, and then you go down to South America, and you got, by and large, Spanish and Portuguese spoken. What's the common thread? Okay, Europe. All right, yeah, Europe. Okay, let's go back in history a little bit more. What power dominated Europe before the modern day Europe existed? Like I just mentioned, France, Portugal. I didn't mention France, but France, Portugal, Spain, England. What was the okay, yes, the Roman Empire. What is a common thread today? It just so happens that Rome is still a power. It still is a power. And if you look at the Chinese are a major threat. The Chinese adopted a central banking system because of World War II. As a result of World War II, 1945. That's the year that the central bank in China was established. The Chinese didn't develop communism. Communism is a governing body that controls the economics of China as a result of the British East Indies Company. And some other things. But in a short definition, that's why the Chinese practice communism. And communism didn't. I just told you, Karl Marx. Oh, he's right. Isn't he kind of one of the fathers of communism? Is that what we're thought? That we're taught? Well, yeah, the Russians also practice communism. So, if you look at these, the common thread. What is the common thread? And what makes the United States such a great, productive, wonderful, shining beacon of freedom and liberty for the world? What makes it that? The reason it was founded: religious freedom. You start taking those freedoms away, folks, that's when your country dies. And your country right now is on life support. Make no mistake about it. And unless you do something, that means talk to your neighbor, talk to your city council, talk to your school board, write to your governor, write to your senator, demand answers from this Federal Reserve System. And unless you do that, not only you will lose your freedoms as you are continuing to lose them, but your children and your grandchildren will know a country of slavery. I'm not talking about black, white, Chinese, I'm talking about economic slavery. And now we're getting serious because you're talking about your human being, your body being enslaved. You get that vaccination. Look at ID 2020. Look at ID 2020. Go to my website. Click on digital slavery. That's not my research. That is information sent to me from a researcher out of Dublin, Ireland. 15 pages over 3 years of research she compiled. It was taken down by Medium. So the contents are a threat to whatever agenda the Microsoft-owned Medium platform has. They don't want you to know whatever that woman in Ireland compiled, which has to do with quantum dot tattoo, which has to do with QR codes, which has to do with ID 2020, the San Francisco-based company that's funded by Gates, Gavi, Rockefeller, and others, which aims to put a tattoo on your wrist or other places where somebody can simply scan a barcode and have access to your bank account records, your medical records, and other things. A complete and total violation of your privacy. You can find that article currently at iantrottier.com. Just click on the tab. It says digital slavery. Go through it. Pass it on. That's what you can do. You can continue to listen to voices like mine, but more importantly, listen to the voices of the people that agreed to join the show. Like Ray McGovern, somebody that worked for the CIA for 27 years, that had been arrested for speaking out against the CIA. Wait a second. How is that even legal? Well, somewhere they got him with something. And he was arrested. Ray McGovern used to hand deliver. He was so trusted in the CIA community, he would hand deliver briefings to George Sr. in the Oval Office. Hand deliver. John Kiriakou, blowing the whistle on the Bush administration over Guantanamo waterboarding. Kevin Schiff, former CIA, blowing the whistle on the CIA, the corruption in the United States. Yeah, it's here. It's real. Your country has been invaded, and this power wants nothing more than to destroy it. So, this is an epic turning point. And I implore you to use that word again, because I've used it a couple times during this hour and 20 minutes almost now. I implore you to raise your voice with no fear. Have no fear. Like Leila just said, be a lion, roar. Now is your time to save your country, or you will lose it. CentnerAcademy.com. I thank Leila again for her work, and I thank you for listening. And until next time. Look, as I mentioned last week, you follow me on Instagram if you want these types of updates. IANTROTTIR. The Hidden Nazi. The untold story of America's deal with the devil. There is an organization on this planet that I believe manipulates your way of life due to the naivety of the human being and culpability of desiring a definition of God. That's what I believe. And that's my freedom and my right to believe that. And it coincides with the founding of this great, beautiful nation, religious freedom. Dan Reuter, the Hidden Nazi, next week. And until then, folks, be awesome.